Hello everybody, and welcome to the Shakedown Sitdown. Today I'm interviewing Joey Miller. We last saw him on this channel when he was sharing his story about being a Monet market partner, then moving to Q Sciences, and then ultimately realizing that multi-level marketing is a scam. But I'm not only interested in people's stories when it comes to multi-level marketing. I'm interested in people's stories about who they are, how they grew, how they became the people that they are today, and all of the struggles and the triumphs and tribulations that come along with it. Today, Joey is sharing with us his story, his personal coming out of the closet story. I find that these stories and these conversations are extremely important to have because there are people out there in this world today who still don't know that it is okay to be who they are. It is okay if you are gay, a lesbian, bisexual, transgender. It is okay. Because maybe they're living in a world, in a home, where they're being told it's wrong, it's a sin, and it's not okay. And it's important that we put these conversations out there, not just for the children, the teens, the adults who might be grappling with coming out, but also for the families who are telling their children that they're wrong, they're sinful. Part of this conversation of what you're going to hear is not just part of Joey's story, but we are going to talk about the perspective of his mother and what she experienced and what I can hypothesize or speculate about what was difficult for her. And that's not to empathize with the parent that kicks out their child. Please understand that it's not that I'm trying to empathize, but I am trying to give perspective. Because just as we who are in the LGBTQ plus community know that it is okay and it is normal and it is acceptable to be gay or whoever you are, people were raised in this society to believe one thing, and that straight is the only way. And to make long and lasting change, that's going to take time. So I really hope that you enjoy this conversation. I do want to give a brief trigger warning. At one point, Joey does talk about a particularly dark point in his life, so please just be prepared for that. And I hope that you enjoy this interview and this conversation, and please leave me a comment on any thoughts you have. If you'd like to see more from Joey, any thoughts that you have or questions for Joey, please leave them in the comments, and we will for sure answer them and get to you. Thanks so much and enjoy this interview. Welcome back to the show, Joey Miller. I'm really excited to have you on the show today. So today we're going to talk about our personal stories, or rather your personal story, as just a gay man, how you, just your experience in general. This is like probably the worst intro I've ever done. But basically, I just want to provide an opportunity for regular people like yourself, not saying that I'm not a regular person, but regular people like yourself to share your story out in a way that maybe might reach somebody who can benefit from hearing what you went through, and hopefully that will give them some guidance or just the peace of knowing that they're not alone. So tell us. So if you didn't see Joey's first interview with me, Joey was a former Monet market partner that went to Q Sciences, but now we're going to get to know more about you, Joey. So go ahead and tell us just about your story, everything.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I love your mission with what you're trying to do with this series or whatever it is, because when I first came out of the closet, it was on my 18th birthday, which was in 2015, and I came out of the closet on Facebook, and social media coming out is really common these days. Like, that's basically where you announce to the public that, like, this is how it is. I'm gonna get to that in a little bit, but the very first thing that I said was that, like, I wanted my story to get to somebody else because, like, I grew up Roman Catholic and just very religious, and it made it basically impossible for me to figure out that I was gay because of my religious upbringing. And so when I came out of the closet, like this little 18-year-old, I was like, I need other people to hear this so that they know that they can do it, and that, like, like it's okay to be like, no, I actually am gay.
Yeah, and isn't that
Anyways.
such like a weird balance too? To like, sometimes I have that thought because I have a very similar upbringing as you. I was raised Catholic. I am bisexual, so dealing with like coming out, or just because I am in a hetero, looking marriage, but I am a bisexual, and so just like, in the idea of being like, oh, my story. Who needs to hear my story? Like, I'm nobody. But I think what's really important is to know that just it's not about hearing celebrity stories. It's about hearing everyday people and knowing that our stories are similar. So yeah, I think it's really important that you did it that way.
100%. And it's actually really funny because when I publicly came out of the closet, it was so I was forced out of the closet in July of 2014. The gentleman A, nothing but nice things to say about him now, but he definitely did not understand how I could possibly have figured out that I was gay and not tell my parents. He just could not wrap his head around that. He had been out for 10 years. Basically his whole life he had known that he was gay, and
Was
like
he older
was
than was he older than you?
he was
Or
1 year older than me, but basically the same age.
so he knew for a long time. Then you said you came out in 2015, you were 18 years old. So around the time he was like 8 years old, he knew and was able to come out. And in his environment, it was safe for him.
Yeah, yeah. And like he had basically been, I mean, the whole time that I knew him, I met him in when I was in the fourth grade. So I was 9 years old and he
Okay.
was already out of the closet. And as like, and that was like, okay, numero uno, the first exhibit of my brain training was literally like I went home from my little public school. I was homeschooled until I was in the fourth grade, went to public school, was in a play, and the very first play that I was in found a gay boy, and I was shook. And I'm like, there, like, go home and tell my family, like, there's someone who's gay in the play that I'm in.
You did
And
that. You told them.
oh yeah, like because
Okay.
we had never talked about gay people. Like it was just not a conversation. And so I'm like, gay, and he likes boys. Like it was shocking information. And I go home and I tell them, and they're like, there's no way that he could possibly know this young, this early in life, who he's sexually attracted to. And in my 9 year old self, I'm like, well, I'm interested in women and I know that. And like, and so like my innocent self was already in the base ideal of like, how could
Absolutely.
he not know that he's like, how
Of
could he
course.
possibly like that didn't
Right.
make sense
Well,
to me.
because it's always like that question that goes back to when I think one of the best things I ever heard, and who knows where it was, whether it was a meme or an interview or something, was somebody said to, and maybe it was a gay man or woman said to a heterosexual, when did you know you were straight? It's like that same idea because my son, when he was in like kindergarten, told me he got married to a girl. So like, if we can accept that as just like, oh, ha ha ha, so cute and funny, but then if he had come home and said I got married to a boy, now in my family this would have been fine, but
Right.
other families been like, what the grow, it would have been a
Yeah.
big deal. Yeah.
100%. So in addition to that, when I was growing up, lesbians were referred to as Lebetians, because they were
Okay.
aliens from outer space.
Oh,
That was the reasoning
okay.
behind that phrase. And so, and I'm so to anybody watching this who's like, that is so offensive. I am only saying this because I'm trying to give an understanding of how my brain was wired. Like that was how I was raised. This is how it was phrased to me. And I didn't have knowledge of that. And also, to put that aside, like as you get into like middle and high school age in the Catholic Church and you're in Sunday school, you start to learn about the sections of the Bible that talk about sex. And some of those sections are the sections that talk about homosexual sex or whatever it happens to be. And so, like, that also definitely played a part.
Which we know now from education and experience that that part of the Bible actually is referencing pedophiles and not homosexuals. But at the time, it
No
was
clue.
very
And
right.
that's how it was presented to us, was like,
Right.
this is what happens to gay people. Like they burn in hell.
Basically, yeah.
So that's how I went my whole life. And I'll be honest with you, like in hindsight, there was a lot of people in my childhood who knew that I was gay the whole time. Like a couple of my aunts, they always knew that I was, and they also always knew the ideals that I was being raised under. And so they kind of always like put themselves around situations to like make sure that they were near me, to like look out for me. And then when I did finally come out, they were like, yeah, we've known
But
that for
that's so wonderful that you at least had that.
100%. Yeah, no, I looking back on it, I'm like so grateful to those aunts that just like stuck around and put up with the crap, because one of them, my aunt, she actually she lived in Oregon when I graduated high school. And because of everything that I went through, she flew all the way to Virginia for my high school and college graduations and was just like there. And I had no idea until afterwards. And she sent me a message and she's like, I'm here at your graduation. I'm like, shut up.
Oh,
Like all the way
that's
from
so
Oregon.
sweet.
So literally from birth until like even still in my adulthood, like these aunts are just like on my team, always looking out for me. And I also, my sisters are, I have a little sister and an older sister, and they're so amazing and supportive. My brother doesn't quite understand. I'll probably get to that at some juncture in a little bit. So I came out July of 2014. I was forced out, and so and some of this is like stereotypes, and I'm not trying to stereotype gay people, but there were, looking back on my childhood, there were a lot of signs and signals as to like my interests and my behaviors and all of that stuff that could have insinuated like that I was homosexual. And there were several times throughout my childhood that it would like come up. So I was super heavily bullied. When I first got to public school, I like everybody called me gay. And that was another thing that kind of made me think that there was something wrong with it, was like these people were being mean to me because they thought I was gay, even though I wasn't. And so it led me to a super suicidal place when I was in like, I think it was in the 8th grade, when I was like inflicting self-harm, all of that stuff. And it was just because the bullies were like, they had just got, it was just too much. And like, I've always had a pretty strong personality, but I always take the opinions of others super, super, super to heart. Like
Oh, I know that.
oh
Yeah.
my God, they say don't care. And I'm like, I don't
Right.
know how I'm supposed to not care. Like, I care
Right.
about how the grocery store clerk perceives me when I go in to get my groceries. Like, that's important to me. Like,
Maybe you relate to this. For me, it's not so much that I care what people think about me, but what I don't want is for anyone to say anything negative about my character, who I am. Like if I come up, I want people to at least say, "Oh, she's a really nice person," or she's got a good heart. Like at the very least, if my personality is too much for them, or they think I'm like a little bit cuckoo, that's fine. But I care enough that I don't want anyone to hate me. I want people
right.
to at least be like, "You're a good person." So I understand that to a level, like you don't want to care what people think of you, but you kind of do.
Yeah. Well, and then like with all of this, hold on one second. Rupert, go
Sure.
on. Out. Come on. Come on. I have a Pomeranian and they pant so hard,
Oh my
and it
gosh.
like distracts me when I'm trying to hold a conversation. I'm like, stop panting in my ear. I can't concentrate on the task at hand. But yeah, especially when it's a negative perception, I definitely don't want people to be feeling that way about me. I don't
Right.
know. I just, and I think it's also the way that I was raised. Like we definitely took it serious. Like the your last name and stuff like that, and how you're representing your family and all that stuff. And I've always been super outgoing, so they've called me like the ambassador of the Miller family. So when I'm representing a family and someone's saying like horrible things about me, I have to fix it, and then I go into fix it mode. And so I don't know, the bullies, it was just too much. And I don't know, they always say to turn to like a family member or a teacher or somebody in an authority place that can help you with these things. And I actually had my Spanish teacher in the 8th grade. She was the coolest person I've ever known. Like, just the best. And when I was going through these things, she figured it out. Like, she could tell that there was something going on with Joey, not as cheery or whatever. And she would hold me after class and just be like, what's going on? And we would talk about it. And then she was the one that eventually talked with the principal. Principal brought my mom in, all that jazz. But and then I was pulled from public school because of my emotional state. They were like, you should not go here anymore. We're pulling you away. And honestly, that was the worst thing that they could have done, because that was like the jerks won. Like, they were able to get me out. And then like I was gone. I only took a semester off and I was homeschooled for that semester. And then I like convinced my mom. I was like, I got to go to high school. Like, I'm a young man. I deserve to be able to have a high school experience. I want
so like they pulled you from school and you just weren't in school?
Yeah. So this happened in the 8th grade, and they like pulled me from public school. I still took my math class there because my mom didn't want to teach me math. And so
she was like homeschooling you again.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
I went back to homeschooling for a semester and did not finish the 8th grade, which also put me way behind on my standards of learning testing. And I ended up not getting my advanced diploma because I didn't finish 8th grade. And I didn't find out until I was like a month away from graduation. And I'm like, I guess I'll get a standard diploma. Like, I mean, I took AP and stuff like that, but standard it is.
I think in our last interview, we talked about how you had like standard and advanced diplomas. I think that sounds familiar now.
Insanity. It was just so dumb. So anyways, I was pulled from school. Bullies suck. And like, as an adult, I see people talk about bullies and I'm like shook, because as an adult, bullies don't quite make sense, because as an adult, if you're being bullied, then there's proper reciprocation in adulthood for that. Like, if somebody were to bully me at work, I could report them to HR and then they would get in trouble at work.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, 100%. Whereas like bullies in school, it like, they just kind of get away with like their
because it relies on what the school's going to do about it. So if it's like detention, okay, but if the kid doesn't care about detention, because it's not just the school, it's the parents, and so you can't rely on just the parents necessarily to always intervene and do the right thing if they find that their kid is bullying you. But I think also when we get into adulthood, it's a combination of that, what you just said, with that there are real life consequences for it, but also we as adults are able to, it doesn't necessarily hurt less, but we're able to process it and handle it better, so that we're able to hopefully, and I can't speak for every adult in the world, but hopefully we are able to have a better support system in place, as opposed to when you're an adolescent and everything is just, we don't know who we are at 15, 16, 17 years old. And when you're getting bullied, how are you supposed to navigate your feelings on that? So yeah, it's sad to say that it still happens into adulthood. I think that's the thing that we want to create, I think, okay, so you're, how old are you now? I think you're 10 years
25.
Yeah, so you're just about 10 years younger than me. There was a big campaign when I was in high school, and maybe it was still around when you were in high school. It was like the It Gets Better campaign. Do you remember that? And I want to say that it does, and then we're going to get to like your whole story, but I want to say that it does, but I think that part of it getting better is that you learn how to deal with it better, because as we've seen, there are adults who are still terrible people, right? So, okay, so let's get back to your story.
The It Gets Better project, I actually know people in like the higher ups of that company. A couple of my So never mind. That's going to be
No,
a
we
long
can talk about that
tangent,
more. Yeah.
I love the It Gets Better project, the Trevor project, all of those.
Yes, I don't mean
And
to insinuate it's not a good project. I
no,
just mean
yeah,
like,
no.
yeah,
And the It Gets Better project, like it does. I agree with you 100%. Like we just get better. I think I don't think it gets better. I think I get better. Like
right.
you get better. You get better at coping. You get better at processing and all the things. Like
Well, I mean,
when
it's
I was
because
in,
you find your people. You find
yeah.
the people who are going to accept you so that it can get better. Yeah.
And then you also like, so cliche, but you find yourself. Like
Mhm.
when I was in school and people would call me a faggot, I would like want to I would like want to hurt myself. And if I'm an adult and somebody were to call me a faggot, I would want to hurt them. Like I like immediately would want to hurt them. And like, not saying that revenge is the answer, but like that's where my brain has shifted from like, it's not me, it's literally them. Like it's
And
their
I want
own opinion and
I want to
perception.
ask you about that word because, like you just
Oh,
said, that
it's
you've
my
had a
least
shift.
favorite.
Well, right. I mean, there's a lot of people. I mean, widely, I would say it's a very unpopular word in our community. And you said that when you were younger, you would want to hurt yourself, and then as you got older, you want to hurt them. Has that word though? And I can't relate because the bullying that I experienced for myself had to do with my height, had to do with singing. I was called like Big Bird and whatever. And it was just like, it got to the point where I was like, okay, what? I just leaned into it. Right. Did that word ever get to a point where it didn't, or maybe it has, or maybe you think one day it will, where it doesn't hurt you? Has it gotten to that point? Do you think it ever will get to that point where if somebody is to call you that word, that that that's a reflection on them, not on you? And do you think that you can get to that point where you're not going to want to hurt them because it's not a
Okay,
reflection on you, right?
so that one specifically, like
Mm-hmm.
that one word, I think that I would always want to
Yeah.
react
Sure.
really heavily,
Yeah.
because not only was it used by
And there's no
the
wrong answer. I'm
kids
just curious. You're
growing
right.
up,
You're right. Yeah.
but it was also used by family members and adults within
Oh.
my family
So
towards me.
it's not just the word itself, but it's really what that word triggers in memories for you. Because I think,
Exactly.
and that's the thing that I don't think that people think about, because we grew up with that phrase, "Sticks and stones can break my bones, but words will never hurt me," right? But that word for you has such a significant different meaning than it does for me, than it might for other gay men. Like there are going to be gay men who understand how that word can be offensive, but maybe their family never used it in this way, right? And so it
And
doesn't bother them, it bothers you.
I have friends within the community that use it very
I do too.
fluidly,
Mm-hmm.
and it's still like I like have like a
We have a
little
hard
like,
time.
oh my
Yeah.
God, okay,
Yeah.
moving forward from that. And
Mm-hmm.
like I also, somebody recently brought it up to me, like it's not necessarily somebody saying it, but it's also like the way that it's said. So
Sure.
like if it's said in a way that's obviously supposed to be insulting somebody, then like I really take offense to that. But then
Right.
if it's speaking about, maybe like, because lately it's been being used to speak about somebody with more fluid terminology within the community, as far as like their pronouns and stuff go. And so if it's being
Mm.
used in that way, then also fine. Like it literally, like I think that it depends on the connotation that it's
I
being
didn't know
used
that.
in.
That's okay. I didn't know it was being used that way. Okay. All right.
Well, it
Ugh.
also
All
might
right.
not be like super super common, but
Right.
definitely it okay. And then I was also saying before that like I I immediately saw that word as like a reflection of myself.
Right.
And now, even though like my gut reaction is like I want to hurt that person, it still is like I immediately know that it's not a reflection of myself anymore, and it's literally them.
Yeah.
And I also feel a need to educate when I hear that word sometimes, and I'm just like, oh, actually, like, and some people are like, it means a pile of sticks, and I'm like, it means a pile of sticks in Merriam-Webster's dictionary of
Right.
however
Well,
long ago, but like
and
that's
over
not
in
how you just
Britain,
used it.
right? And over in the UK, right, in Britain, a fag is a cigarette. Right. So like there are different meanings for different words. Actually, Trevor Noah does a really good segment on it. I think I covered it a little bit on this channel about the different meanings of words and how in some areas one word can mean something completely different. Like, so for example, if you went over to the UK and somebody said, hey, can I have a fag, can I bum a fag or whatever, you could not say to everybody, around you in London, don't say that word, right? Like it's about, but if
Yeah.
there's someone close to you. So it's just all about just
It's
really
the
understanding
same
that
as
words
like,
have meaning and there are different meanings elsewhere for everyone else.
and then it's the same as like someone saying that's so gay. Like there's literally nothing wrong with saying something like that, but like what did you mean?
Right.
Because and like I'll ask people that, like they'll say, "Oh, that's so gay." And I'll be like, "What word, if you were to pick a word other than gay, which one would you have put in its place?" And they
Right.
say something like stupid or dumb
Right.
or ridiculous, and I'm like, "Okay, so that's where I struggle with the way that you just use the word gay is
Right.
you're replacing it, you're using that word instead of stupid. Like that's not, I don't know. And like that's
Really
where
get you.
that's where I like to educate, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And I also need education from some of my friends because I'm still such a baby in this whole thing. And I'm like, wait a second, what is that? Like, explain
It's
that to me.
Well, I mean, it's constantly changing. It's never stagnant. It is constantly evolving and constantly growing. And I am constantly learning new terminology, it's you're gonna be an old gay man and still not know things that are constantly changing. And same with me. So
100%. It'll probably even get worse. I'll probably just be like, I stopped keeping up 20 years ago. I don't know what any of this means. Um,
right. Oh brother. Okay,
but
so let's
anyways,
get back on track.
yeah. So July of 2014, I was in a summer class at the time. I worked two full-time jobs because I never rested, and I was in so I did an accelerated learning program where I took college for my last 2 years of high school. So I
Okay,
got my associate's degree before my high school diploma, which was
cool.
super dope. And I just like did not, being homeschooled for so long, I was too smart for public school in certain ways. And like, I just didn't understand some of the things and I needed a
Yeah.
different environment. So college was perfect for me. I loved community college. It was great. But so I was in the midst of retaking a math class because not great at the math. Well, I am really good at it, but that's why I'm bad at it in class is because I think I'm really good at it. So I don't listen, pay attention to any of that stuff. And then I test and I'm like, what does any of this mean? So one evening, I was, well, basically, it was a really rough week. Like it had been, me being gay had been building for like a year, and I had figured it out like 6 months before. So, like January of 2014, I was like, okay, so I am actually gay. There's no way that I can change this thing about myself. I have tried to change it a bunch of times. I actually dated a girl for 2.5 years. She was amazing, and I was still with her when I figured out that I was gay, and then we broke up shortly thereafter. And I think that she had a pretty good idea of why, even though we might not have necessarily talked about it.
Tale as old as time, right?
Oh my God, she was amazing. But so
We should
with
start a
her,
support group for women who have dated gay men while they discovered
literally,
they were.
I was so, she got engaged earlier this year. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it was inside of me, but like I was so relieved that like I don't know why I
Ruin
thought that
her?
at
Yeah.
like 15, 16, I could have ruined her chances of love, but like it was honestly a concern. And she's engaged now and gonna get married. And I'm like,
Thank
cool,
God. You're off the hook.
great for you. I'm single AF, and like I'm really happy that this is a thing. But
Great.
anyways, so she I don't know. I It had been building, and eventually I I cooked dinner, and then I kind of just broke down, and my mom was just like, why are you like, what's going on? Like, what is happening in your head right now? And I honestly was really bothered at that point. And this is going to sound terrible, but they always say that mothers know best, and mothers are like a step ahead of their kids, and like they're always like, I don't know. And then I have this thing, and I'm sitting there with like all of these emotions, and like, for sure I'm gay, and my mom does not know. Like, I have to say this out loud? Like, does she know? And because of my upbringing and all of that, I knew what was coming. Like, I knew that it was not going to be well received. And basically, I was like, I just wish that you would stop for a moment to realize that I am hurting inside. And that was what I said. Like, I'm hurting. And that was how I felt. Like, I was 17, and I was still like, what am I? What do I do about this? Like, and I had zero intentions of coming out until after I graduated high school, probably into college. Like, I was going to be locking that closet hard and not coming out anytime soon. And then this guy rushed it along. It was actually like 3 months before that he rushed it along, and that's a very extremely long story. That
We'll have
he
to do
would
a
get
part
way
two.
too much. 100%. And he would get a lot of pleasure out of watching me tell the story if he were to find it at any point. And like, that's just because he's a bit twisted.
Okay,
But
then
I've
maybe we
become
won't
I've
do a
become the
part
bigger
two.
person. So anyways, so he rushed it along, and then like she said, why are you hurting inside? Because you know that you're gay, and you know I'll never forgive you for it. And that was
Oh,
how I was responded to. And I literally, like, I all of this pain of like my entire life, basically, like literally in one statement, just like started spewing
that
out.
yeah, that it did not take the turn that, well, I mean, I kind of know what your story like in a nutshell, but I still, for some reason, that's that sentence, I know you're gay. I didn't expect what was coming next.
Yeah. And
That
like that
that
was
hit
like,
me.
that I already know. Like, you know that I know already. And I did, because I knew that the guy had made efforts to make it obvious recently. And we had
Ugh.
basically just been skating by on this, like, I'm not, and everything's fine. And so I literally, like, in that moment, I froze. And then when she said that, because I had already figured out that like that was who I was, and like that was just how things were in me. And so I went up, I was like, okay, so then I cannot be welcome here in this space if you're not going to forgive me for this simple fact of like being gay.
Well, and not to
And
mention, it's not something that needs to be forgiven, right?
100%.
Like,
So when the guy had like pushed the process along, and I like thought that he had told my mom. I talked with my bosses at the time, the people, I worked for two different restaurants, and they owned both of them. And so I talked with them, and they knew, they had known the whole time I had worked for them that I was gay. And so they were like, oh yes, we know that. And I was like, oh, okay. So I'm really concerned about how it'll be with my parents if they were to find out. And they're just like, you can turn to us. Like, we have your back. And like they had, I don't know if you're familiar with Virginia, but Richmond, Virginia is like a very gay friendly place to be.
mhm.
And that was where they lived for a really long time. So they had a bunch of friends within the gay community. And I knew that already working for them. And that was kind of why I latched onto them and told them and was like, this is a thing. And then when I went up to my room was we lived in a Victorian house, and my room was the only room in the whole house with a lock on it. And the oldest child in the house always got that room, by proxy. And
Okay.
I locked the door and started packing my things. And I was like, okay, I'm not allowed to be here anymore. So started to put my things together, to my mom just banging on the door. And I finally, like, I got some things together and I finally opened the door. And she literally said that she didn't even want to look at me. Like, she said, get out. I don't even want to look at you. I don't, your dad doesn't want to talk to you. Like, literally, like, they didn't, I was up in my room. They didn't want me there. And then I was like, I turn 18 in 8 months and I will be out the day it happens. I had already done the math while I was up in my room getting stuff together. I'm like, I'll be 18 in a very short amount of time and I will be out the day that that happens. And she literally said that if I was not willing to be straight, I was not welcome in their house. Like, I had to shut myself down and live by their rules and ideals or whatever, or else I wasn't welcome there. And so I said, okay, then I'm going to go. And I started walking away, and I had, like, my parents had a car that I drove, and I had a phone and all of the things. And they took my car keys before I made it downstairs. So, like, okay, so I'm not driving anywhere. So
was your dad there as well for all of
yeah,
this?
my dad was there as well. And my dad was actually, so big Victorian house. So I was upstairs. My dad was technically immediately underneath of me in the kitchen this whole time. Then my mom was upstairs. And then I went downstairs the front way. And so my dad was back in the kitchen and I had heard him doing something back there. And I just didn't know what it was. And they took my car key. And then when I walked outside, I was like walking outside and I was going to call my boss to be like, hey, I'm going to be on the street corner. I thought I could drive, but I won't be able to. And I went to text him and my phone wouldn't send any messages. So they canceled my phone before basically as I was leaving the house. So I didn't even have a way to contact anybody. And I had class the next morning. Like, I had class and work and, like, life. Like, I literally had life the next day, and it's, like, late at night.
Well, the thing that I can't wrap my head around, and, like, speaking
Is it okay
as
if I hit my nicotine vape?
oh my God, yeah, that's fine. The thing that I can't wrap my head around, and I say this as a parent, and maybe it's easier for me to say it because I'm a pretty liberal parent, but I can't. It's one thing. It's one thing to not be able to, and I don't say it's one thing like as if it's an acceptable thing, but it's one thing to not be able to accept or process or deal with the fact that your child has told you something that you think is morally wrong, right? That's one thing. But to completely remove any possibility of them being able to communicate, taking them out of where they can live, not giving, like, they kicked you out of their home, turned off your cell phone, took away your car keys.
And then
I can't wrap as a parent, I can't wrap my head around there being anything that I would believe my child is so that my child would do that would deserve that kind of treatment.
And then, like, so after saying those things, they never said you're not allowed to live here. You need to leave. It was with, like, they said that with their qualifications, if you will. Like, I can live there if I'm straight and all that jazz. And to this day, they will not say that they kicked me out. Like, my mom will not say that she kicked me out. I left their house is how it's perceived, because I was not willing to live as a straight man anymore. And, like, that, and that's what kills me is, like, even after the fact, like, still being held accountable for, like, literally what they raised me to do. Like, be yourself and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Okay, right. Then I will do that. Right. And like, so anyways, so fortunately my after, like, a little bit, like, it wasn't very long, it was like 20 minutes, they figured out what was going on, and they were like, okay, so he probably doesn't have a car. And they only lived like 3 or 4 minutes up the street. And
you mean your boss?
Yeah, my bosses.
Oh, okay.
And so my male boss, who became my adopted dad, he came and picked me up in the middle of the night, and I went over to their house, and they had a 4-year-old at the time, and we sat on their porch for hours, like 3 or 4 hours, just talking through everything that had happened. And they're like, okay, so tonight you should just sleep in the living room. Like, you can sleep on the couch and we'll close off the door. And then tomorrow, let's start to put together a plan. And I was like, okay, so go to bed. First thing in the morning, I'm woken up by their 4-year-old. And because his school was only like 15 minutes from where my community college was, and I had been driving myself in the car that I had been driving. So I didn't have a phone. And so the other guy that, like, he was also taking the same class that I was, and he was from my early college program. So we had been carpooling and we would switch off days to drive to class. And so I had no way of telling him that I wouldn't be at our carpool spot on time. And so like, I was really concerned that he would be late for class. And so I had them drive to our carpool spot before we left to go to Lynchburg, so that I could like tell him that I wasn't going to be there for the carpool. And then he was like, if you need a ride, like, I don't need to get a ride from you. Like, I'll drive if you need a ride to class, like, and I can come pick you up. Like, I filled him in on everything that had happened. Yeah. And he and I were completely different human beings, but like, he was one of my closer friends and the very first person that found out about anything. So I went to class, and then I went to work. And then after work, they took me to to the grocery store for food that I wanted and stuff. And then we went to the cell phone store, and I got my very first smartphone. It was like the most exciting moment ever, because the iPhone was cheaper than the analog phone. So it was a penny. And so I got like my iPhone 4S, and I was so excited. And then we went to the grocery store, and that was when I logged into Facebook, and I had a message from my mom that was like, we would love to have you back at home as long as you are willing to abide by our rules and standards. And I read the message, and then I read it out loud to my bosses in the grocery store. And I'm like, that means that I have to be straight, right, in order to be there? And they're like, yes, she's telling you that you're not allowed to be gay and be in their house. And I was like, okay, that's what I thought. Is it okay if I keep staying with you guys? Because like, it seems to not be a problem that I'm gay with you guys. And they're like, you're too young to be sexually involved, so please don't be sexually involved in our home, but you can be gay in our house. Right. And like, it was just such a crazy thought to me. I'm like, what? Like, it's not, because I had just been booted. So anyways, that was how we stayed for years. It's officially, it happened on July 14th of 2014 was the official day that it happened. For the first 5 years, I remembered July 14th was like a very big, almost bigger than my coming out day for me. Just because it was like my rebirth day, I guess. Yeah. So it's been 8 years now since that happened. And honestly, it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. I just told you this horrible story, and am now telling you that it was the best possible thing to happen to me. But that's because I was no longer limiting myself with this like limiting belief that like I can't be who I want to be. Instead, it was. And
it's not even who you want to be, who you are. Like, it's I want to be a Broadway star, right? You are gay, right? Like, it's just who you are. It's not something that you can change. So, okay, so it's like the best thing that happened to you. Tell us what has unfolded then in the past 8 years since this.
Okay, so that very first day, I was forced to snap out of it. Do you know how many times as an adult we tell other people to snap out of it? And they're like, well, that's easier said than done. I had no other option. Like, I had to go to this class that I had to get at least a B in, or else my OCD, like, I was not going to be okay in school if I did not get that grade. I almost got a freaking A after. That was a super win after the fact. Like, I kept going to my class. I did 18 credit hours per semester for my senior year of high school. So this happened right before my senior year. So I did 18 credit hours per semester and worked 2 full-time jobs to be able to pay for my associate's degree.
Wow. That's a lot.
And then when I got my associate's degree, I was like, I don't want a bachelor's. I'm just going to keep working and just make sure that I'm always working super hard. And so that was decided at 18. At 19, I was in a super serious relationship that ended abruptly with a man. My very first like real man on man relationship or whatever, but it ended, unfortunately. He and I are still good friends. It was like one of those young love situations.
Sure.
And then I decided to move to Colorado, where I've built an extremely successful livelihood for myself. I like live very comfortably on my own as a single person in a really expensive place to live. And I'm the property care director for two huge vacation rental management companies. I have 6 managers, 6 departments that report to me in total.
Wow.
And I live, oh, and then also my senior year of high school, I still doing all those credit hours, working full time. I was also the senior drum major for my marching band, and we got first place at all of our competitions. Basically, we
so wait,
swept.
did you went to you did your senior year of high school while living with your boss?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So an entire year
I lived in their attic.
An entire year of school. Now, that's, to me, that's absolutely great. So let's just back up for a moment though, because you're not 18 yet. You're living with someone else. But you're still in high school. So your parents legally have authority over you, right? Like so what was your interaction with them in that year? What happened in that year?
So week 1, I spoke with one of my boss's friends who was a lawyer.
Okay.
She advised me to not attempt emancipation because I was so close to my 18th birthday.
Okay.
But we initiated the process because it looked better for me being able to have personal guidance-ship. I forget how they phrased it, but basically having the process started was like safer for me to not ever be forced to go back to my parents' house. And then my high school principal, she was an angel on earth. So I was going to drop out of college. I came really, really close to not going back to community college because of everything that happened. And like, I was like, I can finish my high school. I actually almost got close to dropping out of high school. I'm kind of embarrassed to say that. It like was a very short-lived thing, but that was because a bunch of adults in my world were like, you're not allowed to do that. And it was decided for me that I was going to be staying in school. But my best friend, my very best friend, her and I have been friends since we were 2, and she was in the same early college program as me. So the next day, once I was able to get back on my phone, I filled her in on everything that had happened. And her mom had been like a second mom to me my whole life. And so I was there constantly, like with her and her mom. And so like, even though I was in a strange place and like didn't know my surroundings and stuff like that, I still had my safe space to go to. But okay, so I almost dropped that. Literally still crazy for me to think about. Go back to your original question. What was it?
So what was your interaction with your parents like in that
right.
year? Did you see them,
So I was in the marching band. My mom came to every single football game, and would come over to the marching band area. And it made me look like an asshole because I didn't want to talk to her, and she was still there. And so I would have minor communications with her. Senior night is a huge deal, and I asked for her to not escort me on senior night, and that was also a really big deal, but it just didn't feel right in my mind. I was like, you're not supportive of who I am, so why would you walk me on like the most important night of my high school career?
Right.
My bosses forced me to go to church every single Sunday. I had no control over it. That was because I was under 18, and church was so important to my mom that we were all basically convinced that as long as I went to church, she would let me keep living with them and she wouldn't touch that situation. Okay,
I understand. So going to church with your family.
Yeah, I would go to church with them. Usually my dad's mom went to church at the same time as them, and she sat in the back of the church. And so I would usually sit with my grandma, so that I didn't have to sit with them. But sometimes I would still sit with them. So I would see them every single Sunday. I was talking about the emancipation thing mostly because my mom still had to sign all my permission slips for my senior year of high school. We had this huge band trip that we were going on, and it was literally like pulling teeth trying to get these permission slips signed. It's like, yes, come over and have dinner with us and sit with us for a while, and then we will sign your permission slip. And I'm like, great. So I have to sit and okay. Oh, another fun side note that I forgot to say. One of my best friends at the time, I had one bag of things, because when I was putting stuff together, I didn't expect it to be a permanent thing. So like a week after, I did not have my house keys anymore. Those were taken from me, but I had a little secret, a dirty little secret, and I would go out. So my window, there's like this much space for me to step off of my window and sit on top of the patio. And my dad sat in the patio smoking cigars. And so I would sit on top of the patio smoking cigarettes as a 17-year-old, just like so cool, just sitting there smoking cigarettes. So I always had that window unlocked because that was where I would go to sit and unwind or whatever. Yeah. And I had to like
climb in through the window.
Yeah. Climb in through the window to go downstairs to unlock the door so that me and my friend could get the rest of my things out of my bedroom.
Gosh. Now, how was your relationship with your mom before all of this? Like when you were younger and, middle school, did you guys have a good relationship, or was it, not just your mom and your dad?
So my dad traveled most of my childhood. His job kept him on the road a lot. And so we were mostly with mom. And especially being homeschooled, like we were with her a lot. And honestly, I was a mama's boy. Like I was attached at her hip. I was always the one that was like giving her hugs and like making sure that she was okay. She figured out pretty early on that I had ADHD tendencies, and she gave me like mental tools to help work with that. Like she's like, on a list of 3 things, your brain is going to be apt to forget the thing in the middle. So make sure to focus on the thing in the middle, because you'll always remember the thing at the beginning and at the end. And I'm like, okay. And as an adult, I literally make a list of the things in the middle, and I've never once forgotten the thing at the beginning or the end. Like, so like our relationship was so good, I would say. And like even marching band competitions, like, and I was in youth group, and my mom was the youth group coordinator. Like we were literally together all the time. Like, and I think that that's what bothers me the most now, is that it was such a great relationship. And in certain ways it's given me mommy issues. Like it's literally like I don't know, like I react super well to male authority. Like it's really interesting to me. And I don't know. So everything was great as a kid with that. Besides the fact that I was just always kind of different. Like I was not like, I played sports, but it wasn't my jam. I like was much more into my little sister's Barbies and American Girl dolls than I was into action figures and that type of thing. It just like, it was always like my whole life growing up.
And that has to be so hard too. I mean, I think the thing that nobody really seems to think about or necessarily unpack is that, when you look at both sides of July 14th, that day, and I don't say this to necessarily be like, we need to empathize with your mom, right? But my mother is very Catholic, and she and I have my own story, not quite as similar to yours, but there are a lot of similarities. And I can understand a woman, or a parent rather, whose spiritual and faith belief is so strong that they feel that they have to choose it over their own child. So not only in that moment, right, are you suffering, but your mom is also suffering because she is losing a son, because in her mind, she believes that she's giving you the choice to say, yes, no, I did. I'm not saying this to empathize with her, but I understand where she's coming from, just to say that, like, she truly believes that she didn't kick you out, because she said, all you have to do is do this and you can stay, and you weren't willing. Right. And so she experienced a loss that day because she made the choice. She also made a choice of choosing religion over her child. And I think what I hope that your story not only reaches people who are like you, but I hope it reaches mothers, particularly religious mothers, who are in that position to say, what is actually more important? Your religious belief, or the safety and the security and the love of your child? And so on that day alone, there was so much loss.
Yeah.
And not only come back from that is hard.
Yeah. And not only in the spiritual sense, but also just like my entire life, like those whole 17 years beforehand, I've thought about this a lot. She expected her son to go on to get married to a woman and give her grandbabies, and like just like that pattern of what she expected from her son. And then, like, in the blink of an eye, that was all taken, and it looks entirely different now. And even though it could not affect the grandbabies thing, it still was affected that day, because like that image, like that thing. And then to go back to like representing the Miller family, that was another huge aspect of it. Was just like before I came out publicly, my dad told me that like he was concerned about like the backlash that I would receive, and just that the family would receive, if I were to state this in a public way. And that's another funny thing that I forgot to mention, is that when I came out publicly on Facebook, I had built it up to be like this thing where people were going to have awful things to say on Facebook. And like literally within an hour of posting it, there was like 100 people that liked it, and all of these comments. And then like people that I had known for a really long time, that's like, preach it, and like just telling me like, tell them like your voice is great. Like, just like all these amazing comments. That's like, why did I sit here for so long and like shove this so far down inside that it was like, I don't know.
Well, absolutely. I mean, because we were raised in a world, in a society, in a bubble, to believe that anything gay was taboo. To just even say the word gay, to say the word lesbian, to say the word bisexual, it was taboo, right? The Rocky Horror Picture Show was like, oh no, like, I'm not a particularly fan of that musical, but like I enjoy it for
You're
the sake
not?
of it. I know. I really listen.
Shut up.
Cancel me again. Like, let me just cancel again because I don't like Rocky Horror. I appreciate it for what it did and what it is, but like I have no interest in going to the shows. Like, I've seen it. I'm cool. Like,
oh my god, it's one of my favorite things.
Of course,
to do.
I'm such an outlier. I'm not the person that and I don't even know why did I even bring that up. Anyhow, my point is, we were raised in such a society where it's so taboo and wrong, and I think what I am trying to constantly do for my own sanity is try to remember that the change that we hope to see in the LGBTQ community, it just can't come overnight. Because we are battling against hundreds and hundreds of years of indoctrination of the nuclear family, the white bread, mother, father, two children, and the puppy dog. Like we that has been our books, that has been our baby dolls, that has been our TV shows, our movies, is that idea. So to take someone like your mother and, when you lose that image that she just believes is right, whether it's right or not, she believes it's right. It is hard for people in that mindset to just say, yep, okay, be who you want. Like it's so hard to, because what we want is for everyone to say, yes, I accept you. I love you for who you are, be who you are. But we're just not going to get that and it's still years out before that's
Well,
widespread.
and like 100%. And like, I think that it takes conversations like these happening in public forums. I think
Yeah.
it takes things like Anderson Cooper, Ellen DeGeneres, like these public figures that do like not shy away from the fact that they are a part of the community. Like, I think that small things like that are going to take the stigma away and make it more like, hopefully somebody watches this and then like is okay, honestly, and this isn't to toot my horn, after I publicly came out of the closet, somebody who I had known not like super well, but an acquaintance most of my life, I had no idea. Like there were people that I thought might be gay. I had no idea. And he, pretty shortly after I came out, he publicly stated that he was gay. And then he sent me a private message and was like, because you said it, I said it too. And like he ended up having some struggles with his mom, not on the same severity
Right.
as me, but still really intense situations with his parents. And like, honestly, like if somebody is out there watching this and you're like, oh my God, my mom's gonna freak out, let her freak out. Like, you are going to figure things out, and as long as you stay mentally like on top of things, like I had to, every single day for that year that I was not living at the house, I had to literally say no to drugs. Like I had to literally X things out that could have distracted me, because it would have been so easy. Like I was not living at home. I had a lot of freedoms. It would have been really easy for me to slip into a certain pattern. And even to this day, like it's a very focused dedication that keeps me away from stuff like that. But I think that that's another stigma around situations like this. Like, oh my gosh, my parents are going to freak out. And then what kind of life could I have after that freak out happens? There is a life, there is one. And like you were saying, it doesn't get better, you get better. Like you get better at, like, after you deal with that first impact, like you get better at figuring out how to deal with the impacts after the fact. Like I spent an entire week at the beach with my family and it was great. Like we had a great time, we were all laughing, it was a really fun time. And 8 years later, things are okay, as long as we don't talk about the fact that Joey's gay. Like, don't bring that up.
I was just gonna say, how are things with your family now? What's the latest with your mom and your dad now?
So, my dad he reacted at first, and then after saying the thing that he said right before I came out, we really haven't had much conversation about it past that. And because of
Remind me what he said right before you came out.
It was just before I came out publicly that I could be like, just the impact that it would have on my life and then on the family.
Sure.
And I did take that to heart, and I did not care, because that was what I needed to do for me.
Yeah.
And then honestly, like my brother is an amazing human being. I love him severely. But he can't wrap his head around it. He can't wrap his head around it, but he isn't mean about not being able to wrap his head around it. And him and his wife very actively try to wrap their heads around it, and they make an effort in their conversation with me, and then they make an effort to just like stay in touch with me. And honestly, like that's as much as I can expect. Like I have to give it to him.
I think that's the best effort that you can expect from people who are raised in the way we were, who are having, and I think that's all we ever ask from anyone. Like it's one thing to, to demand that people accept us, say you have to accept us. You could argue that maybe your brother still doesn't, but he's trying, right? Like it's like a weird balance of what,
So
people are
it's really
comfortable
bad because I think my brother accepts me, but I
with.
don't think he accepts the idea in general. Like
Sure.
I
It's
think
like
that
it's
he and
okay for
his wife are
you, but
both
no one else.
right.
Right.
And my sisters are polar opposite. Like as soon as I came out publicly, my little sister was all over her middle school. I have a gay brother. My brother is gay, and I have a gay brother, and just so
I have street
proud
cred
of
now.
literally street cred, just so proud, and just sang it from the rooftops. And then
Yeah.
my older sister and I were, we actually are the godparents to one of our aunt and uncle's kids. And that was decided before I came out of the closet, wondering how they felt about that decision. After the fact, we'll still raise the child to be a child of God if that were to come to fruition. But my sister and I drove to Pennsylvania for this baptism from Virginia. And the entire time she's like, so are you a top or a bottom? And like literally like all of the questions,
All
like
the
she
questions. On
wanted
your
the
way to the
scoop.
Catholic baptism.
Sister had the
I
questions.
love
And
it.
that's
Okay.
how it stayed.
So you're and your mom. How's mom? What's going on with mom right now?
Well, most recently, back home, a local high school was going to host a drag extravaganza, and they posted about it on Facebook. And my mom was tagged in a post that's like, "This is coming to the town. Beware, parents." Basically, like
Oh
parents beware, and
no.
call the school and get it canceled. Um, so there was like a huge Facebook thread, lots of people talking about how bad this thing is. And recently, referencing something outside of our discussion today, recently Roe v. Wade was overturned, and my mom is on the side of pro-life. I am on the side of pro-choice.
As most
And
Catholics are, yeah.
100% expected. And she basically told, and I explained to her that I went to the pro-life marches as a kid. And like personally, if I were able to impregnate a woman and I did that and she wanted an abortion, that would be a really hard thing for me to wrap my head around. Like personally, I would have a hard time with abortion per se, but in a political sense, in a general sense, I'm very pro-choice because I have lots of girlfriends that have had horrible situations. And anyways, I explained that to my mom, and I was like, because of that, I am pro-choice, and that's just how I'm going to stay. And she was like, I was the exact same way when I first met your dad, and then he told me to pick a side of the fence and I couldn't sit on it. And I was like, I'm proudly sitting on this fence, and it's not really a fence. This is just like where I stand with my morals. So that's just how it's going to be. And then this drag extravaganza thing comes up, and she doesn't say that she's not okay with it on Facebook, but by her not saying that she was okay with it on Facebook told me that I knew how she felt about it.
Sure.
And she had been tagged in it. And so I'm scrolling through Facebook and I see beware of a drag extravaganza happening at Forest Middle School or whatever it was. And I literally was like, I don't hold space for stuff like this on my social media pages. Like this is not on par with what I like. And when I saw who was tagged, I was like, okay, I'm sorry, but you're not my friend anymore. Because if you didn't immediately see that and want to remove your own tag because you're like, oh my God, I have a son who is gay and he might not be a fan of this being on my page. If you didn't immediately do that, I don't know what to tell you. And then so I sent her a message, was like, I've removed you as a friend. We weren't friends for a very long time because of everything. And then about a year ago, I was like, fuck like it. Like I'll add her as a
Sure.
friend, whatever. I don't really use Facebook anyways. I mostly use Instagram. Um, and it literally like, oh my God, I just completely lost my train of thought.
You unfriended
Like
your mom on Facebook.
unfriended my mom on Facebook. Okay, I sent her a message and was just like, this is how I feel. I can't
Yeah.
hold space for this on my page. And she was like, well, I wasn't, I didn't say how I felt about that. And I was like, right, but you weren't okay with it. And she's like, well, no, I don't think that a school should be hosting something of that nature or something like that. And I was like, okay, so you do have a side of the fence and you have picked it. You just picked the side that your child is not on? Like, what in the world? And it's kind of to your point a little bit ago where you said, like, I don't know what my child could do that, like, I would pick my religion over them. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what would constitute that. And like, that was one of the things where I was like, even though I'm not a drag queen, like, and that's another thing is I don't know if very many people that are straight, I don't know if they understand how, even though I'm not a drag queens have a major part in our culture as a community.
Absolutely.
You know what I
Well,
mean? Like,
well, because we have to remember that, and we don't have to be okay with it, but we have to remember that things like drag, things like gay clubs, things like pride were so often portrayed or retold to the conservatives, to the heterosexuals, as perverted moments. Like if you were, now I've been to my fair share of drag shows where they are super inappropriate and no children should be there, right? But that also applies to things that happen with heterosexual shows.
regular dance recitals.
Let's not even get into dance recitals. Hold on. But I just mean like, but just, there are heterosexual things, comedians, musicals, movies that are so risque, so pushing that envelope of what is appropriate to be on screen, to see in person, right? We see that all the time. There are strip clubs. There are like, there are just so many things that are heterosexually normal that even though there are some drag shows that are super sexual and risque and should not be, exposed to children, that does not mean that carte blanche all across the board it is a risque thing. But
and
when it
didn't
comes
somebody
to
recently say that like one police officer doesn't represent all police officers, and so I don't understand how one drag show could represent all drag shows.
But
Like,
that's because it's so hard for people to change their minds. It's not easy, and so we just have to go through the arduous process of remembering that we cannot demand exact change like that. That it has to take time. It has to be a ripple effect, because it's just not. And sometimes a lot of people who are conservative like that and don't agree with our community and our values and our cultures, they're not able to necessarily see the connection between, well, if this is okay, why isn't this okay? And the example I'll give, my mom and I had a conversation a couple weeks or so ago. There's a musical called 1776 that is about when, the founding fathers signed the Declaration of Independence. It's one of my favorite musicals. I love it. Whatever. Mr. Feeney. Yes, I'm so glad you know it. If you know Feeney from Boy Meets World, he played John Adams in the movie musical. So anyhow, love that musical. Well, there are some theaters that are doing all female renditions of it, meaning that these women are playing the male roles. They're not changing Thomas Jefferson to Tammy Jefferson. It is a woman playing Thomas Jefferson and a man playing John Adams. And God damn it, if I don't play John Adams before I die, I'm like not going to have fulfilled my life, right? But my mom was like, no, that's not right. And I was like, what do you mean that's not right? And she was just like, well, they were the founding fathers. They're men. And I was like, okay, but they're women playing men. And once I explained to my mom, okay, but you remember that there are pants rolls in The Mystery of Edwin Drood. Betty Buckley originated a role where she was a woman playing a man. Literally, it was a pants role. When Shakespeare was around, like, or not when Shakespeare was around, but like from the early days of theater, women weren't allowed to be in shows. So the men had to put on, wigs or whatever to represent women, and they played all the women roles. That's no different than this. And like, once I kind of put it in that perspective, then she didn't fully say, but she was like, well, yeah, I know that. So it's like, I think it's just sometimes seeing things from a different perspective, being presented with, okay, so what are you okay with? You think this is acceptable. You think this is all right. And then when you say, well, how is that different from this? Forcing them to be like, well, I guess it's not. I guess it's not different. And that takes time, and that takes people like you and me in our community to not just say, you have to accept this and you have to be okay with it, but to have these conversations and say, well, let's not just look at, July 14th, your loss. Let's look at the loss of what your mother experienced, right? Let's not ignore the loss that happened on both ends of that. Whether we think her loss is, because there are plenty of people in our community who are going to say, well, it doesn't matter that she was paid. She caused it. Sure, she did cause it. But people like that are so firm in their beliefs that they think that they believe that what they're doing is right, just in the same sense that you believe, yeah, I'm gay and this is who I am, I can't change it. So then you get at a stalemate. It's an impasse of, well, no one's going to end up being right no matter what we think. So we have to take the time to be patient, with people. And so when your mom didn't choose a side, or rather chose a side of the drag issue, knowing, I don't know your mom, but I know my mom, I don't think that people like them consider that. They don't think like, oh, my son's gay, this might hurt his feelings. It's just, they're not connected in their minds. And we have to teach them, we have to show them, and hope that they'll see it.
And that's partly also because like I was saying about my brother, like they see it as okay for like me, but right. in a general speaking term, like that politician, the Republican politician that like voted against LGBTQ rights and then went to his gay son's wedding, like that was like the epitome of, I'm okay with it here, but in general, I'm going to oppose it. And like, he did not put two and two together that day, that like he literally voted against his son being able to have a wedding and then went to the wedding. Like, it's just, sometimes it's counterintuitive, but I don't know. I have a good time educating people. Like it's, and I think it's because it's like everybody's story is slightly different. And it's also becoming more and more prevalent that like somebody falls within the community somewhere, because the community is so broad these days, and it's right. So and that's another thing that I think that people don't understand is they're like, well, why does there have to be a pride festival? Why is there not a straight pride festival? And it's like, actually, we're just being prideful of who we are, and straight people can come to that too. Like, we don't disclude straight people from coming to pride. Right. So like, come and be prideful about being heterosexual. Congratulations.
I don't know why, you want to know why heterosexuals don't need a pride festival is because they've had pride festivals for,
every day for
12 billion years.
Yeah.
Like, it's just
literally
everything has been straight.
Festival.
Right.
Everything has been straight.
Every time you open up a children's book, right? When we were kids, there were no books that had two moms. There were no books that had I didn't have one book that had a person of color in the book. It was all white people. So white people, sorry, I didn't mean to like go into race, but no. it was white and straight. Like, we were raised with white and straight. And the idea of that we can be a white household that has books that feature Black characters, and we can be a straight presenting household that has books that have two dads and two moms. And that doesn't mean that I'm teaching my son or my daughter to be gay. Like, it's not, it just is saying this is the world. And it's a process. And I think that it presents itself with a lot of hope for our children who are coming after us. there's going to be less of them because everyone's getting their tubes tied. But hopefully my son, we talk about it all the time. I say, whoever you choose to marry, whether it's a boy or a girl. I don't just say when you marry your wife. I say when you marry your partner. Like I am very intentional about that because, I don't want my son to ever. My best friend and I, when we were growing up, we always made the joke that if we ever had sons, our sons are going to have to come out of the closet for being straight to us. They're going to have to sit us down and be like, Mom, I like women. And I'd be like, well, then you have to leave. You can't be in this house. If you don't have just rainbows like that, we always made that joke, right? Like we were going to be so accepting. We were going to be so polar opposite of moms who didn't accept their gay kids. And I hope as a mom, I hope to still be living that life right now with my kids. And I know that whatever your life, leads, if you end up finding someone and adopting a child, that your child will have a completely different experience than you.
I am going to be finding a very rich husband who will buy me a baby that's mine. And that's just
just buy you a baby to say
but it's gonna be mine. Like I want it to have my genetics, but I need him to pay for that because it's very expensive.
It's very expensive, yeah.
And then so another little sidebar. I was at the beach with all my family, and I have.
And when was this? Recently?
It was in May. And I have 2 nieces and 3 nephews, and my 2 nieces and I were playing at the beach, and I forgot how we got onto the conversation, but we were talking about painting nails, and the girls were like, boys can't paint their nails, Uncle Joey. And I was like, yes, they can. And they laughed at me in their little 5-year-old way. They're like, no, Uncle Joey, fingernail painting is for girls. And I was like, girls, I want you to hear me loud and clear right now. If a boy wants to paint his fingernails, that's okay. Mm-hmm. And they in the puzzled 5-year-old way, wait, what? Because it was a new idea for them. And then they carried on with their sandcastle building or whatever it happened to be. And I know my brother, and it's not like I'm trying to change his kids or anything like that. But I knew that his girls probably had the idea that only girls could paint their nails. And
what you just provided for them, right? You inadvertently likely have helped some little boy somewhere in their lives, because by hopefully what they learned from that or what they heard from you was that it's okay. So then if they encounter a boy who is wearing nail polish, they'll either not make a deal about it, or if they see someone else making a deal about it, they'll stand up for him because you intercepted early. And that's the whole point, is teaching our daughters and our sons that these things are it's just nail polish. It doesn't matter.
Literally stole that brainwave straight from my head, because that is how I have explained it to every person that I've told that story to. Is I'm like, they're girls. So I don't even they're not going to be affected by that, but hopefully someday they're in a situation where somebody's getting picked on for being a boy and having his nails painted, and they can just super nonchalantly be like, boys can have their nails painted, it's okay. And then move on, because they remember their uncle saying something like that when they were young. And I think back to my aunts being pillars for me and stuff like that. And even though I don't have this feeling about any of my nieces or nephews, I just I do have this feeling of needing to help give them culture that I didn't have when I was a kid. And if they do have something going on, then it's going to make it so much easier for them if they do ever figure out maybe I'm gay, maybe I'm lesbian, maybe I'm bi, literally.
And you'll be the uncle they can come to, and that's amazing.
100%, and they can remember that. So
yeah, I mean, just a small little brag on my end, because my son is 8, and he just did Shrek Jr., the musical, and he was cast as the Big Bad Wolf. And for anybody who doesn't know that musical, the Big Bad Wolf is he's always in a dress because he dressed up as the granny. And they make this joke in the original production. The lyric was, in this one song, they labeled me a fashion. No, wait, what was it? they ripped and tore my granny dress and called me a hot and tranny mess, right? Like that was in, when did this come out? It was like 2005, 6 that this musical came out, right? Now they've since changed the lyric to be, they labeled me a fashion mess because I wore a granny dress, right? They've taken out the tranny joke. But in Junior, they still have that lyric. They labeled me a fashion mess, and the Big Bad Wolf wears a granny dress. And so my son gets cast as the Big Bad Wolf. And it was maybe 30 seconds of my son being like, I have to wear a dress. And I was like, yeah, the Big Bad Wolf. He dressed up as the granny. He was like, okay. And I was like, you cool? And he's like, yeah. And then the director message was like, hey, is he okay to wear a dress? And I was like, Dean, you're okay to wear a dress for the Big Bad Wolf? He's like, yeah, I'm okay. And he did. He wore a bonnet. He had a dress with the tail, and he was fine because it wasn't like in our house. That's not a thing. You know what I mean? And so like, it's small little things like that just, they have a ripple effect as the kids grow up. And unfortunately we didn't have that luxury, but hopefully we can give that to our children, our nieces, our nephews, and so on and so forth. So I guess, so you went to the beach with your mom and your family. So I guess you guys are cordial enough, or things like ish. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we just don't talk about the gay thing. Like it just doesn't come up. And like they say often that like I could bring a guy around and it would be fine. But like, I'm not kidding you. If I brought a guy to a family gathering with my family, it would be the most uncomfortable thing. Like,
well, and it's not only that too, because then the layers of it. So let's say that they say you can bring a guy around. Great. Okay. You do. You guys, it's awkward. You get over that. But that's the one, like that's your partner for life and you want to get married. Then you, as yourself, and then your family, your parents, you're going to go through this really difficult moment of, are your parents going to come to your wedding? And your parents saying, are we going to skip our son's wedding because of our religion? And both of you are going to have really difficult struggles. I believe,
because do you know what? I would put $500 on it right now that they are not coming. And I have totally made peace with that. And
you have, that's good.
Yeah, no, honestly, like I think it'll be a better time without them there. Honestly.
Probably.
So
well, that's amazing to hear though. Like that's like really great. Now here, plot twist, they're gonna come. That's what you're not ready for. You better make peace with what happens if they come
invited.
Up. You're gonna have 2 ceremonies. One's that just like, dry and a little boring.
Won't have my partner come to the second one. I'll be like, the second ceremony is for my parents only. It's just me.
Well, I think that because I hope I want to wrap this up just because I don't know that anybody will last an hour and a half listening. But I think that this has been a really great conversation. I'm so glad that you have come out on the other end of this great. Like you seem to be just thriving and living a great life. And if you let's do this. If there is, we know the whole adage of like, it gets better. And yeah, we just talked about that. But if there's anybody who is a teenage boy who is still in the closet, or even a mid-20s man is still in the closet, what advice can you give somebody who is grappling with how to come out, when to come out? What advice can you give to anybody who might be watching?
I would say that almost just like anything, the timing is going to present itself to you when it's meant to, and you shouldn't rush it. I've dated people that are in the closet, and I always tell them that like, even though I am super far out of it, like do not feel rushed to leave it. If you're comfortable there, then stay comfortable there. I got uncomfortable in the closet. I was ready to take the next step, and the opportunity presented itself. So just literally trust your intuition, and like also trust your intuition on the fact that you're gay. If you're, don't hesitate. Like it's not a choice. It's not some crazy thing. It's literally just like somebody who is straight
So now I'm going to ask you to do something else. If there are parents who are watching who maybe are more in line with your parents, what gentle advice can you give them if they are,
Literally, I think that the very best advice that I could give to anybody is do what you do with anything else that happens within your religion. Before you react to it, go pray about it. Because I could almost guarantee that after praying about it, your God will not be telling you to react the way that you originally feel like reacting, because that's not the way that he rolls.
I agree with that 100%. All right, Joey, thank you so much for being here. I think we just have to have you back
Thank you for
for
having me.
more conversations about just so many things. I love talking to you, but
I
this has
love
been
talking
great.
to you, and I'm 100% down for part 2, 3, whatever. I'm
Yes.
here for it.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much, Joey.
Thanks, Mallory.